Thank you. This paper and the line of inquiry is motivated by two urgencies around what we all need to regard as the core project, the key and core project of education, which is social change. First, the urgency is born in the perilousness of an age dominated by disinformation, by deep economic anxieties, by an existential unease and distress around war, climate change, AI, joblessness, the ascendancy of social media, especially social media echo chambers, the degeneration of political discourse and civility, the rise of autocrats around the globe, and much, much more. Second, the urgencies born of the need for action, to have students understand their education as consequential, as ameliorative, particularly in an age of a prevailing lack of trust in societal institutions where young people struggle to find a sense of agency. So I argue here that an expansive and malleable media education is forcefully relevant to both the urgencies defined here. The criticality of media education demands that it be regarded as an educational foundation across, in my view, all curricula and all disciplines. The pedagogies that comprise media education define and support learning environments in which the subject matter is necessarily relevant to and resonant with students for whom media is oxygen. The vastness, the complexity, the ubiquity of contemporary media have made media and experiences of mediation foundational to almost every aspect of human interaction in most of the world. So media education or media literacy, which was a commonly used terminology in the early conceptualization of the field in the 1970s, has been revitalized in the 20th century. And the concept has long articulated and emphasized its project to understand media as a matter of achieving literacies and communicative competencies, goals that have become infinitely more complex in the expansion and the velocity of change in digital media and culture. The core literacies have become singularly wide-ranging than at any other time throughout the history of media education. And these literacies have come to include media literacy, the standard, a kind of foundation, algorithmic literacy, digital literacy, data and information literacy, and likely many, many more to emerge concomitant with the pace and the unceasing elaboration of technological change in communication media, its applications, its platforms, its engagements, and its practices. As my colleague Stuart points and others have argued, quote, the current media environment can appear to be one part utopian science fiction and another dystopian mind management, unquote. Media education needs to contend with both, frankly. On the one hand, this utopian perspective, communication is unimpeded and instantaneous, and media environments have become accessible and open and participatory. Such optimistic perspectives suggest a democratized media environment of creativity, of productive and constructive play, of powerful tools and capacities of production. Media education then demands, forges, sustains new pedagogies that are truly hands-on and project-based and collaborative and real world. The dystopian dimensions can be articulated in the observation of many educators, fair or unfair, that our students have more information at their fingertips than at any other moment in the histories of media and communication technologies, yet they appear somehow deficient in their abilities to curate spurious news sources from authoritative ones in social media, that they are somehow incurious about history, and that they live in a perpetual present tense. They are unconcerned with privacy and with algorithmic manipulations. They are prone to coalesce into belief-based audiences fed and sustained by information echo chambers. Space doesn't, and time doesn't permit a comprehensive overview of the development and critical influences in media education. But at least in 21st century terms, I can establish that two major developments accelerated the development of new concepts and pedagogical strategies around understanding media. First, capacities of digital media in terms of globalization, in terms of speed, in terms of dissemination, in terms of access and influence. And second, the scope, depth, constancy, and intensity of emerging forms of technology-based consumerism among young people, whose engagements with media have become a way of everyday social and cultural life. This scale and quality of mediatization of everyday life demanded new, robust, and critical educational research and pedagogies that were nimble, that were responsive, that were anticipatory, that were capable of addressing the dynamism and the pace of technological change in the digital media age. Earlier approaches to media were focused on a range of concerns, including protectionist or maybe interventionist motivations that were intent on inoculating young people against the deleteriousness of influences in media content. The analysis of media as texts, almost a literary approach, deconstructed and theorized in terms of codes and symbols and formula and the like. Or media arts approaches that define and emphasize the empowerment of young people through the acquisition of skills, a hands-on approach of analyzing media through doing media. Maybe true to the dictum of Dewey, give students something to do, not something to learn. And finally, I think approaches that emphasize representation, and this is and Canada has a claim to much of the innovation in this area. This is Len Masterman's seminal work that situated media education in broader principles of democratizing and learning environments to dismantling the hierarchical structures of the classroom, collaborative and participatory practices, and an emphasis on student-centered, student-driven projects of media analysis. In the erosion of trust in societal institutions, education and media education in particular assumes a particular priority. Education is situated in and is obliged to address, must always address broader political, economic, and sociocultural currents of the times. Most important, the transforming epical works in education. And here I refer to Rousseau and Arendt and Bentley and Bourdieu and Dewey and Freire and Illich and Postman and many, many others, all articulated and asserted the need for educational design, philosophy, and practice to attend to the very societal conditions which structure and direct educational purpose and context. Directly stated, all educators, no matter what the discipline, can ill afford to conduct their research, design their content, develop their curricula, create their learning environments without a deep dive, a very deep dive into prevailing political, economic, and sociocultural currents and conditions and controversies. So I want to refer to the trust barometer, really great concept in an ongoing annual research. The trust barometer, a highly influential and authoritative global survey of trust in and credibility around broad societal sectors, including government, media, business, and non-government organizations. And this offers a particular case in point. The Trust Barometer by Research Institute of the International Edelman Communication has been conducted, and the research proceeds now as an online survey of a general population using demographically representative samples reflective of the population. So it's across 28 countries, 32,000 respondents, 1,150 respondents per country. And what the data seeks to seeks to connect is the complex formulation of personal attitudes to broader societal forces and identifiable trends in opinions and perspectives and priorities and issues. The 2023 and 2024 Trust Barometer research reports offer an account of the daunting challenges faced by educators who properly understand education as the antidote to these erosions of trust around the globe. The factors that have given rise to and sustain this crisis in trust are powerful determinants of fear and anxiety. And they include the collapse of economic optimism, personal anxieties around job loss and AI, inflation, existential fears around climate change and war and humanitarian catastrophes and food security, and political leaders perceived as thuggish and corrupt and dishonest, the global prevalence of income-based inequality, the belief that government is not competent to manage and regulate innovation and technology, a trust in peer opinion over authoritative sources, and much more. So in all, government is regarded as far less, in the report, as far less capable and ethical than business. Who knew? And governments and media are viewed as sources of misinformation and engines that fuel distrust, leading to deep divisions and polarization. So the need for media education, is urgent and critical. And the need for education in general to serve as an instigator for social change and to influence public sphere and to elevate public discourse above rancor and division. These needs have never been greater. And the projects of digital civic data and information, algorithmic and AI literacies, all in this area of literacies, are especially critical. As Kellner and Scher observed, as digital media and communication shape, organize, reinforce, and perpetuate information, ideas, and values, media education becomes teaching and learning toward the empowerment of students. The project of media education is to connect learning with real world, consequential participation in democratic society. Perhaps unexpected in the Trust Barometer Global Report is the revelation that not government, not media, not non-government organizations, but business is a most trusted factor. A substantial majority, global majority in the survey responded that they buy or advocate for brands, these are young people, on beliefs and values that brands have the power to create shared identity and that business has a critical role to play in the information ecosystem. This is more than an invitation for media education. This is an imperative of media education. Branding and social purpose marketing and advertising have come to dominate media universe of the young who seek definition and solution to gripping social problems through brand identities. Media education is a pedagogically effective means through which we can meet our students on their own cultural ground, about halfway. In the final analysis, our ability to achieve goals of educational philosophy that prioritize citizenship and work to renew trust depends on our capacities to design and conduct programs of media education at every turn. For young people, social purpose marketing establishes a connection to brands that appear to have staked out social responsibilities and moral territories. Indeed, as governments are seen to recede from their roles as custodians of the public interest, social purpose branding has become a ground upon which young audiences, young consumers engage with complex issues of the day. Consumer conscience is designed around brands that declare social concerns and attach themselves to compelling social causes and social issues. Arguably, advertising has long been one of the most powerful, pervasive as well, culturally based vehicles for narrative. Thank you. That is, promotional culture has become a site and a means by which stories are told, cultural values created and asserted, technologies developed, ideologies articulated, and where an awareness, even an understanding of social issues is formulated. So there we have it. Who are seen by young people as the custodians of public interest? The voices of social responsibility and change, not government clearly operating in a trust deficit, but rather Nike and Guinness and Starbucks and Gillette and Burger King and Anheuser-Busch and Microsoft and Patagonia and British Petroleum and Coca-Cola, and the list goes on. Millennials and Gen Z are demanding greater levels of corporate social responsibility. As a 2023 One Poll survey revealed, 80% of these demographics are likely to base their purchases on brands with a clearly articulated social message or purpose. Young people want to see companies taking public positions on reducing carbon footprints, on implementing DEI, on supporting LGBTQ rights, on participating in fair trade and charitable global giving, on sustainable investment, of standing against on-the-job harassment, and much more. As photographer and filmmaker Oliviero Toscani, the provocateur behind the hugely controversial and global Benetton campaigns of the 90s, observed, quote, "It's interesting that provocation comes from a very strange place, advertising. I find it strange that the voices of capitalism, the voice of consumerism, provokes," unquote. For better or worse, contemporary branding represents social issues and their solutions. And millennial and Gen Z demand what the industry calls authentic advertising, or advertising with social messages, or purpose-driven branding. This is the precise and urgent subject matter of contemporary media education, a critical engagement with media environments, particularly, and an analysis of the robust trust quotient in business and brands. There is an understanding that it's somehow in this zone of consumerism, that they begin to understand or not. That's the evaluation. That's the critical dimension of media education. Social issues of the day. A sense of, we need to reinvigorate a sense of personal and collective action and consequence. In conclusion, the evaporation of trust in institutions around the globe demands an urgency for educational intervention, because education is an antidote to fear and distrust, to the sense, especially amongst the young, that their economic futures have been foreclosed, to the turn toward populist movements, resurgent nationalisms in authoritarian regimes, to contested and acrimonious public sphere in which falsehood is routinely misconstrued as fact. The argument here is that media education is precisely an intervention that should be regarded as foundational curriculum, because, as established earlier and hopefully illustrated, the media are the oxygen of their everyday lives. The educational focus on media is experienced by our students as supremely relevant and consequential. The trust in the perceived ameliorative capacities of business among young should be understood and engaged with in terms of where young people find meaning and agency. This is not to suggest that our students eschew political action and demonstration. Quite the opposite. There is a substantial global history of student protests around the globe in terms of issues of war and discrimination and racism and authoritarianism and climate change and much, much more. But with the daily ceaseless engagements with popular culture in the form of brands that stake out and amplify their commitments to social issues, these are determinative of media education's and illustrative of media education's cruciality. Incumbent upon all educators, researchers, and instructors is the design and delivery of education that is truly student-centered. And if I can borrow from Marshall Gantz and reformulate his terminology, It depends on our move forward in this area. It depends on an educational design and delivery that arises out of the need for young people to have a critical eye, an understanding of the world's pain, and above all, a hopeful heart. Hope in Gans's insight is the experience of possibility. And the experience of possibility is surely the raison d'etre of education. Thank you.